CEO's daughter acts like a cleaner to find true love. What happened next will shock you. She was on her knees, scrubbing the floor of a bathroom that wasn't hers. Her hands were red, her back was aching, and there were tears, real tears, running down her face. A man stood in the doorway and looked at her like she was nothing. "You missed a spot," he said. Then he laughed and walked away. What he didn't know, what nobody in that building knew, was that the woman scrubbing that floor owned it. Every single brick of it. But that's not even the shocking part. The shocking part, the man who laughed at her, was about to change her life forever. And not in the way you think. If you've never seen a story like this before, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is where stories like this live. Real, emotional, jaw-dropping stories that will stay with you long after the video ends. Now let's go back to where this all began. Her name was Claire Bennett. She was 32 years old, blonde hair she usually kept tied back, with quiet blue eyes that seemed to see everything and give away nothing. To look at her, you'd think she was just a regular woman. A tired one, maybe. The kind who's been working all her life and never quite caught a break. But that was the idea. Claire Bennett was the only daughter of Robert Bennett, the founder and CEO of Bennett Group, one of the largest real estate companies on the East Coast. Hotels, office building, apartment complexes, shopping centers. If you'd driven through Connecticut in the last 20 years, you'd almost certainly walked into something with the Bennett name on it, whether you knew it or not. Robert Bennett was worth over $4 billion. And Claire, his daughter, his only child, his heir, was worth just as much. On paper. In real life, Claire had spent the last 10 years watching something ugly grow inside the company her father had built. Fake people, greedy people, people who smiled at her face and stabbed her father in the back. People who dated her or tried to, not because they loved her, but because they wanted access. To the money, the power, the name. She'd been engaged once. His name was Philip, tall, handsome, charming in that slick, practiced way. He'd held her hand and told her she was the most real person he'd ever met. Then she'd found the emails. He'd been talking to a business partner, talking about how to use the engagement to get a meeting with her father, about leveraging their relationship for contracts. He hadn't loved her. She'd been a door he was trying to open. That was 3 years ago. After Philip, Claire stopped letting people in. She stopped going to the galas, the charity dinners, the events where everyone knew who she was and what she was worth. She started asking a question she couldn't shake. What would it feel like, just once, to be seen for who I am and not what I have? The idea came to her at 2 in the morning. She was standing in her penthouse, looking out at the city lights, and it just arrived. What if nobody knew? What if she went somewhere, one of the company's buildings, not as Claire Bennett, heiress, but as someone else entirely? She called her assistant the next morning. "I need a new identity, a clean one, nothing that connects back to me." Her assistant, a sharp woman named Dana who had worked for Claire for 6 years and had seen stranger things, didn't even blink. "How long?" "As long as it takes," Claire said. 3 days later, Claire Bennett, CEO's daughter, billionaire heiress, started her first shift as a contract cleaner at the Harlow Tower in downtown Hartford, one of 17 buildings her family owned in the city. She wore a gray uniform, a name badge that said CLAIREM, close enough to feel natural, different enough to feel free. And she got to work. She expected it to be hard. She did not expect it to be this hard. The work was physical in a way she hadn't prepared for. Floors, bathrooms, kitchens, lobbies, trash bins that made her eyes water. By the end of her first week, her hands had blisters on them for the first time in her life. She went home every night, soaked them in warm water, and told herself she was learning something. The building she was assigned to was mainly office space, financial firms, a couple of law offices, a tech startup on the 8th floor that seemed to operate entirely on energy drinks and anxiety. Most people didn't notice the cleaners. They walked past them in the halls the way you walk past furniture, polite enough not to say anything rude, not interested enough to say anything at all. Claire had grown up being the center of every room she walked into. This being invisible was something new, something strange, and she realized slowly something kind of peaceful. And then there was the man on the 14th floor. His name, she found out from a nameplate on his office door, was Daniel Holt. He ran a mid-size architecture firm, 7 employees from what she could tell. Clean space, no frills, drawings pinned to every available wall. Daniel Holt was not the most handsome man she'd ever seen. He had dark brown hair that was always slightly too long, glasses he had to push up constantly, and he dressed like someone who bought good clothes and then immediately forgot to iron them. He was, by most standards, completely unremarkable. Except for one thing. He said good morning to her. Every single day. Not in that distracted way, the way people say it when they're already looking at their phone. He stopped, he made eye contact, he said, "Good morning, Claire, cold one out there today, huh?" Or, "Hey Claire, did you catch the game last night?" Or just, "Morning, you doing okay?" At first she thought it was a performance, some kind of act. She watched him with other people, with his employees, the delivery guys, the woman at the front desk. He was the same with all of them. He just talked to people like they were people. One afternoon in her 3rd week, she was cleaning the hallway outside his office when she heard him on the phone. His voice was careful, measured. She wasn't trying to listen, but the door was open. "Dad, I hear you," he was saying, "but I'm not doing it that way. I don't care what it costs us. We do it right or we don't do it." A pause. "Yeah, I know, okay, love you." He hung up, sat back in his chair, rubbed his face with both hands. Then he noticed her standing in the doorway, mop in hand, trying not to look like she'd heard anything. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he laughed, a real laugh, a little embarrassed. "Sorry about that, family stuff." "Don't apologize," she said before she could stop herself. "You were right." He looked at her differently then. Not like she was furniture anymore. Like she was someone who'd surprised him. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah," she said. And she went back to mopping. But she was smiling. And she didn't know why that scared her. Over the next few weeks, their hallway conversations got longer. He brought her coffee once, not as a gesture, just because he was going to the machine anyway and asked if she wanted some. She said yes before she could think about what that meant. They talked about the city, about architecture, about a news story she'd mentioned in passing that he'd clearly gone home and read about, because he brought it up 2 days later with his own opinion. He listened when she talked. Really listened, the way people used to listen before everyone had a screen in their pocket. She found herself looking forward to the 14th floor in a way that made her uncomfortable. Made her want to tell him the truth. And that was the most dangerous feeling she'd had in years. The crack. It happened on a Thursday. She was in the bathroom off the main hallway, the one that was her least favorite to clean, small and always damp, when she heard voices outside. Men laughing. And then clearly her name. Well, not her real name, the name on her badge. "You mean the cleaning girl, the blonde one?" "Yeah, Dan's got a little crush, I think." More laughter. "Come on, she's a cleaner, he's just being nice." "That's what I mean, it's a little sad." She stood very still. She'd heard worse things said about her in her real life, much worse. But this hit different. Because for a moment, just a moment, she'd forgotten to be careful. She'd let herself feel something. That same afternoon, Daniel knocked on the open door of the supply room where she was restocking her cart. "Hey," he said, "do you have plans Friday night?" She looked at him. He looked at her. "I know it's a weird question," he said. "And if it's weird, tell me, and we'll forget I asked. But there's a restaurant I've been meaning to try, and I hate going alone. And you're the only person in this building who I actually want to talk to." She should have said no. Every smart, careful, self-protective part of her was screaming no. "Yeah," she said, "okay." The restaurant was small, Italian, the kind of place with candles on the table and handwritten menus and a waiter who clearly knew Daniel by name. Claire had worn the nicest thing in the apartment she'd rented under her fake identity. A dark green dress she'd bought on a lunch break, nothing like the clothes in her actual closet. She felt strange in it, not bad strange, just different. Like she was someone she hadn't been in a long time. Daniel was already there when she arrived. He stood up when he saw her. "You look great," he said, not smooth, genuine. She had to look away for a second. They talked for 3 hours. She learned that he'd grown up in Vermont, that his father had been a carpenter before he got sick, that Daniel had wanted to be an architect since he was 9 years old and had drawn buildings on every piece of paper he could find. He'd built his firm from nothing. No family money, no connections, just work and a few lucky breaks and a reputation that spread slowly because he refused to cut corners. "I had a client once," he told her, "who wanted me to use cheaper materials than what I'd spec'd, wanted to save money. I told him I'd give him back the deposit before I'd do that." "What did he do?" "He hired someone else," he shrugged, "and 6 years later part of that building failed a safety inspection, so." She told him about her own life, or the version of it she'd built for this experiment. She told him she'd come from a complicated family, that she'd spent a long time trying to figure out what she actually wanted versus what she'd been told to want. She told him she thought most people never had the chance to find out who they really were because they were too busy being who other people needed them to be. He was quiet for a moment after that. "Then, that's the most honest thing anyone said to me in a long time." "I'm an honest person," she said. And even as the words came out of her mouth, her stomach twisted. He walked her to the corner of her street. Not to her door. She'd told him she was fine, and he'd respected that. "I'd like to do this again," he said. "Me too," she said. He smiled. She turned and walked away. And the whole walk home, she felt something breaking open in her chest, something that had been closed for a very long time. And something else too. Dread. The unraveling. 3 more dinners. A Saturday walk through Bushnell Park where he'd pointed at buildings and explained what he loved about them. A Sunday morning at a coffee shop where they'd sat for 4 hours and neither of them had noticed. She was in trouble. She knew it. She'd known it since the second dinner, maybe earlier. She was falling in love with this man. And he had no idea who she was. She told herself she'd tell him soon, that she was just waiting for the right moment. She told herself this the way people tell themselves they'll start eating better, tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. What ended the waiting wasn't a moment. It was a face. She was having lunch near the office, a sandwich place 2 blocks from Harlow Tower, when she saw him. One of her father's senior vice presidents, a man named Gordon Walsh, who had worked for Bennett Group for 15 years and who had attended every single family Christmas dinner Claire could remember. He was sitting 3 tables away. He hadn't seen her yet. She pulled her hood up and stared at her food and prayed. He didn't look up. He paid. He left. She sat there for another 10 minutes, not eating, just breathing. It was a warning. She knew it. If Gordon had seen her, if word had gotten back to her father, the whole thing would have unraveled in ways she couldn't control. and Daniel would find out from someone else. In the worst possible way. She called Dana that night. "I have to tell him before someone else does." "Are you sure?" Dana asked. "No," Claire said, "but I'm going to anyway." She texted Daniel the next morning. "Can we meet tonight, somewhere quiet? I need to tell you something." He replied in 2 minutes, "Of course, you okay?" She stared at that. "Of course, you okay?" That was the thing about him. That was always the thing. She typed back, "I will be." The confession. She got to the restaurant before him, sat in the corner booth, ordered water and then didn't drink it. When he walked in and saw her face, he knew before she said a word that something was wrong. "Hey," he sat down across from her, "what happened?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I have to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to let me get through the whole thing before you say anything, because if you stop me in the middle, I don't know if I'll be able to finish." He put his hands on the table, still, patient. "Okay," he said. And she told him. Everything. Robert Bennett, the company, the $4 billion, Philip and the emails, the 2M idea, the gray uniform and the name badge, the 14th floor, him. She told him about the coffee, about the hallway conversations, about the Saturday in Bushnell Park. She told him that she hadn't planned to feel anything, that she just wanted to know what it was like to be seen without all the rest of it, and that somewhere along the way she'd stopped being able to stop. When she finished, the table was quiet. He was looking at her. Not angry, she'd expected angry. Not shocked or not just shocked. Something she couldn't read. "Say something," she said. He picked up his water glass, put it down. "The thing you said," he started, "about wanting to know if someone could see you without all the rest of it." "Yeah. I saw you," he said. "I saw you before I knew any of this. I want you to know that." Her throat went tight. "But," she said. "But I need time," he said. "Not because of the money, not because of who you are, but because I thought I knew who I was talking to, and I just need a minute to catch up." She nodded. She understood that. She more than understood it. "Take whatever time you need," she said. She left first, walked to her car, sat in it for a long time. Then she drove home. And she cried, really cried, for the first time in 3 years. The week of silence. He didn't reach out for 6 days. She didn't reach out either. She'd promised herself she wouldn't. She went back to her real life, the penthouse, the meetings, the woman everyone expected her to be. It felt like a costume now. Like she was the one wearing a disguise. On the 5th day, her father called. He'd heard something. One of his people had seen her in the building, in the uniform. Word travels fast in small worlds. "Claire," his voice was careful, "what were you doing?" She thought about how to explain it. "I was trying to find something real," she finally said. A long silence. "Did you?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "I'm not sure yet." Another silence. Then quietly, "Your mother used to do things like that, disappear into ordinary life for a little while. She said it kept her sane." Claire hadn't heard her mother mentioned in a long time. She had to press her lips together for a moment. "I know," she said. "I know, Dad." On the 6th day, her phone buzzed. "Daniel, can I come over to wherever you actually live?" She almost laughed. She typed back her real address. 3 dots appeared. Then, "Of course it is." He arrived at 7. She opened the door and watched him take in the lobby, the elevator, the hallway, the penthouse. He didn't say anything until she closed the door behind him. "Okay," he said, looking out at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I have to tell you something now." She turned. He reached into his jacket pocket and put something on the kitchen counter. A business card. She picked it up. Daniel Holt. Holt Architecture Group. She frowned. I know your firm, I've seen your office. Turn it over, he said. On the back in small print was a second line. A subsidiary of Holt Development Corp. She looked up at him. My grandfather, he said quietly, started a development company in 1971. My father ran it. When he got sick, I took it over. I kept the architecture firm because it's what I love. The development side, I stay out of the papers on purpose. He paused. We've done business with Bennett Group 3 times in the last 5 years. The room was very, very still. You knew, she said. It wasn't even a question. No, he shook his head. I did not know. I found out 4 days ago when I went to my company lawyer and asked him to pull everything we knew about Bennett Group because I was trying to figure out who you were. And he asked me why I cared, and I told him that I thought I might be in love with the daughter. She stared at him. He thought that was very funny, Daniel said, for what it's worth. She laughed. It came out of nowhere, a real laugh, surprised and helpless. And then she was crying again, different tears this time. So you were hiding too, she said. Not hiding, he said, just not volunteering information to the cleaning staff. She shook her head. We're ridiculous, she said. Completely, he agreed. He was standing close now, not reaching for her, just close. I came back, he said, because when I was sitting in my apartment trying to talk myself out of this, I kept coming back to one thing. What? You scrubbed floors, he said, for weeks. You didn't have to. You could have run focus groups, hired consultants, done anything. But you got down on your knees and you did it yourself because you wanted to understand something real. And I thought, that's someone I want to know. She looked at him. I did miss a spot, she said. He was right about that. Daniel burst out laughing. And then finally, he reached for her hand. And she let him. They didn't rush. That was the thing she'd remember most. How carefully they moved, like 2 people who both knew what it cost to trust someone and had decided it was worth the price anyway. She went back to her real life. He went back to his. But now those lives overlapped, in real ways, honest ways. He came to the penthouse on weekends. She went to his apartment in Wethersfield on Tuesday nights, the one above the hardware store with the creaky 3rd step and the kitchen that smelled like old wood and coffee. She loved that kitchen. She'd never told anyone that and had no idea what to do with it. Her father met Daniel 4 months later. They liked each other immediately, which surprised Claire and seemed to surprise neither of them. Robert Bennett shook Daniel's hand and said, I understand you make honest buildings. I try to, Daniel said. Good, her father said, so does she. And Harlow Tower, the building where it had all started, got a renovation that year. Daniel's firm designed it. Claire signed the contract. Neither of them told the press the real story behind it. Some things are too real for a press release. But the cleaning staff got a raise. A significant one. Nobody knew why. Claire knew why. And she smiled every time she thought about it. You know, the thing about Claire's story is that she didn't find love by being richer, or more powerful, or more impressive. She found it by being willing to be ordinary. To show up, to scrub the floor, to let herself be seen without the armor. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the person who sees you in that moment is exactly the person you needed to find. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this one. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now, because we drop stories like this every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Share this one with someone who needs a little hope today. You probably know exactly who that person is. And we'll see you in the next story.